Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first part of the Introduction to Culture Studies lecture cycle. I hope you are all present in the live introductory meeting on Google Meet last week, so you know how we are going to proceed this semester. So every week you will get USOS mail with the information, mostly containing the links to those recorded parts. You should also register to Moodle and do the quizzes there. Plus, if you want to ask any questions, there is a forum section on Moodle you can visit, and I even asked the first question myself, and I would be very interested to hear your answers. So the first part today is about the general stuff. So nature and culture, how they are related, and also the differences and similarities perhaps between culture and civilization. Very often these two words are used as synonyms, but they are not exactly synonyms, so let's look at them in greater detail. So first of all, nature. Nature, of course, doesn't need people. It has existed before human beings and could exist without them. By nature, I mean the physical, material world or the universe. So not only the life on Earth, but generally any kind of matter. So if we look at the scale of nature, we can observe three different scales. The cosmic scales, the cosmos scales, which refers to huge objects such as galaxies and the universe, and objects in the universe on a large scale, scale that is somehow difficult to imagine for humans very often. Then there is the macro scale, or the bio scale, that is the scale of everyday life, of the life on Earth, the scale of nature understood as life on Earth, basically. Plus, the third scale is the micro scale, the scale of tiny particles of quantum physics, of the smallest elements that make up nature, such as atoms, for example, or even parts of an atom. So, of course, what we are interested in is the macro or bio scale, so nature understood as life on Earth, rather than the cosmic scale or the micro scale, which are governed even by different physical rules than the life on Earth. So for cosmic scale, it would be the relativist physics. For micro scale, it would be quantum physics. They were all developed in the 20th century, and they could result in some changes in our perception of what nature is and how we can perceive nature. But let me stress again, for the sake of this course, for the sake of this lecture, we are going to stick to the Earth, and even more specifically to something that I'll mention in a moment. So about nature and about human nature, human beings have existed regardless of their own volition. We do not normally make a choice to be born, and we continue living, most of us, whether we like it or not. Biologically speaking, humans are social creatures similar to great apes. However, there are some differences. Perhaps these are just the difference of degree rather than, I would say, the difference of existence, or ontological differences. Because humans are, as far as we know, the only creatures who try to understand nature, who try to understand their own place within it, and consequently they try to make sense of life, to understand their rights, their obligations. We have philosophy, we have science. On the other hand, we have morality and religion. These things have been developing for as long as humans have existed. And if you look at the illustrations for this lecture, you'll see that this is when I quote a very, very famous quotation from philosopher Immanuel Kant. Two things owe me most: the starry sky above me and the moral law within me. So humans can feel very small, very humble before nature, before the greatness of the natural world, but also they can feel very powerful and very knowing because of their unique capability of understanding and analyzing nature. If we look at the history of cultural studies, we normally go back to the 19th century, sometimes earlier. We'll see when we talk about anthropology, we'll go back to the ancients. But for today, let's step back to the 19th century. Here we have two philosophers, or natural philosophers as they were called then, which now would probably mostly translate it into scientists. Auguste Comte, a French philosopher, and Charles Darwin, a British biologist or natural philosopher, natural scientist as he called himself. So why do I have them here on this illustration? Comte believed and persuaded the others to believe that science, based on the observation of natural phenomena, is the best, the most reliable, and for him even the only source of true knowledge. So this is what we are going to follow. We are going to follow observation of natural phenomena concerning culture. For Charles Darwin, of course, you may remember him for his theory of evolution, mostly the two very influential books that he published, On the Origin of Species and The Descent of Man. And in these books, he persuaded that the evolution of living organisms, including humans, happens naturally and is like a natural force towards improvement, towards progress. So this is also something that we'll encounter time and time again. So summing up this little part, we stick to nature on the macro scale or bio scale, even though we could apply other perspectives, such as the perspective of quantum physics or relativist physics. We are not going to be very absorbed with that. So we can assume that matter exists only on the macro or bio level of nature. Living organisms interact with the environment by means of complex structures and organs built of the same elementary particles as everything in nature, of course. The perception of reality, it happens through the brain, so through material things. Material objects are one side of this perception. Non-material emotions are another side of the perception. So what we have is two types of reality: objective reality and subjective perception of the reality, which usually are quite similar across the species. This is why I have this image of an apple. Probably most of you agree that what we see here is an apple, and it is something that's edible, something that's for most people tasty, and it's red in color, the variety here. So this is nature, and this is nature versus culture, because what we are going to talk about this semester is not material nature, biological nature, but a very specific aspect of that, namely human social life. Human social life, that is the elements of material world that are created by humans, that wouldn't exist without the humans. Like mathematics would exist without the humans, but history wouldn't, because it depends on the humans to create it, to write about it, to analyze it, to understand it. So in the next part, we move toward the definition of culture.